You just found out your coworker makes the same salary as you, but somehow they're buying a house while you're wondering if you can afford new shoes this month. Your college friend is posting vacation photos from Bali while you're eating leftover pasta for the third night in a row. And every single time you open social media, someone you know is celebrating another financial win while you're secretly checking your bank balance before buying groceries. So here's the question that keeps you up at night. Am I the only one struggling, or is everyone else just better at pretending they're not? The answer is going to completely change how you see money, success, and every person around you who looks like they have it all figured out. Because what I'm about to show you isn't just surprising, it's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about who's actually winning financially and who's just performing. Here's what you're going to discover in this video. The real numbers behind what the average person earns, saves, spends, and owes. Not the filtered Instagram version, not what people claim at dinner parties, but the actual data that reveals how most people are really living financially. You'll find out exactly where you stand compared to everyone else, whether you're ahead or behind, and most importantly, what you need to do differently to end up somewhere better than average. By the time we're done, you'll never look at someone's expensive car or fancy lifestyle the same way again. And if you're serious about understanding money and finally getting ahead instead of just keeping up, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. This information could be the wake-up call that changes your entire financial future. So let's get into it. Now, before we dive into the numbers that nobody likes to talk about openly, let me ask you something important. When you think about how the average person handles money, what image forms in your mind? Do you picture someone who's got everything organized, steadily building wealth, preparing for the future with a solid plan? Or do you imagine someone who's basically surviving month to month, hoping things somehow work out eventually? The truth is, most of us have absolutely no idea what normal actually looks like when it comes to finances. We make assumptions based on what we observe around us, but reality is usually dramatically different from what we imagine. And here's why understanding these real numbers matters so much beyond just satisfying curiosity. This information gives you the context you need to make better decisions with your own money. Think about it this way. If you're trying to get healthier, wouldn't you want to know what the typical person weighs or how often they exercise? If you're trying to improve academically, wouldn't you want to understand how you compare to other students? Money works exactly the same way. When you understand where you stand compared to everyone else, you can make more informed choices about your spending, saving, and investing strategies. So let's start with something that affects absolutely every working person. How much money people actually earn. When you receive your paycheck, are you bringing in more or less than the typical worker? According to the most recent employment data, the median full-time worker earns approximately $1,100 weekly, which translates to roughly $57,000 per year before any taxes come out. Now, let me break this down more clearly. We're talking about individual income here, not household income, which would include a partner or other family members who might also be working. And when we say median, that means half of all workers earn more than this amount and half earn less. It's the exact middle of the distribution. If you're making around $27 or $28 per hour, you're right there with a typical full-time worker. But here's where reality starts to bite. That $57,000 figure is before the government takes its share. After federal taxes, state taxes where applicable, Social Security, Medicare, and whatever other deductions come out of your paycheck, that number shrinks considerably. Depending on where you live and your specific tax situation, you might actually be taking home somewhere between $40,000 to $45,000. Suddenly, that doesn't feel like quite as much money, does it? But income is only one part of the equation. What really determines your financial health is what people do with that money once they've earned it. And this is where things get genuinely fascinating and honestly pretty concerning for a lot of people. Let's talk about retirement savings, because this is where many people are in for an uncomfortable reality check. According to recent financial surveys, the median amount that people have saved for retirement across all ages is approximately $87,000. Now, before you start feeling too confident or too worried about that number, remember this includes everyone from people in their 20s just starting out to people in their 60s approaching retirement. Here's the part that should make everyone uncomfortable. Roughly 28% of working adults don't have any retirement savings at all. $0 set aside for when they stop working. Zero. That means more than 1 out of every 4 people you encounter is planning to rely completely on government pension programs when they retire, assuming those programs still exist in their current form when that time comes. For those who do have retirement savings, the numbers vary dramatically depending on age, and some of these figures are genuinely alarming. People in their 20s have a median balance of less than $11,000. Now, to be fair, if you're 24 years old and just beginning your career, having $11,000 saved is actually pretty decent. But it does highlight how crucial it is to start building wealth early. The 25 to 35 age group does somewhat better with a median balance around $37,000. But even that amount seems inadequate when you consider these are people who have been working for potentially a decade and should be gaining financial momentum. By the time we reach people in their 60s approaching retirement age, the median balance climbs to approximately $112,000. And while that might sound like a reasonable amount of money, let's put it in proper perspective. If you retire with $112,000 and follow the standard financial guideline of withdrawing 4% annually to make your money last, you'll be able to take out roughly $4,500 per year from your retirement accounts. That's less than $400 per month to live on. $400 per month. Let that sink in for a moment. Could you maintain your current lifestyle on $400 monthly? Even if you owned your home outright with no mortgage payment remaining, $400 wouldn't cover your food, utilities, healthcare costs, transportation, and everything else required for basic survival. This is precisely why understanding these statistics is so critical. If you're currently in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, and you're looking at these retirement numbers, you should be having a serious internal conversation about whether you're saving enough, because clearly the average person is not saving nearly enough. Speaking of government pension programs, since so many people are planning to rely heavily on them, let's examine what the typical benefit actually provides. Government pension data shows that the average monthly retirement benefit is approximately $1,850. That works out to about $22,000 per year. Now, $22,000 annually might seem manageable, especially if you don't have housing payments anymore. But remember, this is the average payment. If you had years where you weren't working or earned minimal income, your benefit could be substantially lower than this figure. And if you're someone who never earned much during your working years, you might be looking at a government check that barely covers essential expenses. On the opposite end of the spectrum, some people take a completely different approach to retirement planning. They structure their retirement assuming they won't receive anything from government programs, treating any benefit they do receive as unexpected extra money. This might seem excessively cautious, but given the long-term funding uncertainties facing these programs, it's probably not a terrible way to think about your future. But let's shift our focus to something that impacts your daily life right now: spending patterns. How much does the typical household actually spend each month? According to consumer expenditure data, households spend an average of approximately $6,200 per month. Over the course of a year, that adds up to roughly $74,000 in total spending. Now consider what this really means. If the average household is spending $74,000 annually, they need to bring home at least that much just to break even without going into debt. And remember, we're discussing take-home pay here, not gross income before taxes and deductions. So if you want to have any money remaining for savings, investments, or building long-term wealth, you need to be earning significantly more than $74,000 per year as a household. This spending breaks down into fairly predictable categories, but the actual amounts might surprise you. The largest portion goes to housing, which shouldn't shock anyone who's ever paid rent or a mortgage payment. The average household spends approximately $2,100 per month on housing-related costs. That includes rent or mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. $2,100 per month just to maintain shelter. That's over $25,000 per year simply to keep a roof over your head. And if you're living in a major metropolitan area, you're probably finding that number laughably low. In cities like London, Paris, New York, or San Francisco, $2,100 might get you a small apartment in a questionable neighborhood if you're fortunate. Food represents the second largest expense category, with the average household spending approximately $770 per month on groceries and eating out. That's over $9,200 per year just to keep everyone fed. And honestly, if you're spending less than $770 monthly feeding your household, you're probably managing your food budget pretty well. Either that, or you've mastered the art of surviving on basic staples and home-cooked meals. Transportation consumes another $1,050 per month on average, which covers vehicle payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance, repairs, and public transportation costs. That's nearly $12,500 per year just to move from one location to another. And this is why financial advisors often suggest that your combined housing and transportation costs shouldn't exceed half of your income. When you add that $2,100 for housing to $1,050 for transportation, you're already at $3,150 per month before considering anything else. Now let's discuss something that can significantly impact your financial future: credit scores. Most people understand they should care about their credit score, but they might not know where they actually rank compared to everyone else. According to major credit reporting data, the average credit score is approximately 718, which actually falls into what's considered good credit territory. Credit scores range from 300 to 850, so 718 places the average person in a reasonably solid position. But here's what's interesting about this number. It indicates that many people are doing at least some things correctly when it comes to managing their credit obligations. They're generally paying their bills on time and keeping their debt levels somewhat reasonable. But don't let that 718 average make you think everyone has their credit situation figured out. There are still plenty of people struggling with scores in the 500s and 600s, wondering why they can't qualify for favorable interest rates on anything they try to borrow. Your credit score affects virtually everything from your mortgage rate to your car loan terms, and some employers even check credit scores before making hiring decisions. The encouraging news is that maintaining a decent credit score isn't complicated. Pay your bills when they're due, don't maximize your available credit, and avoid opening new credit accounts every time a store offers you a discount. It really is that straightforward, yet somehow a significant portion of the population still manages to struggle with it. Speaking of credit, let's address the uncomfortable topic that nobody wants to discuss openly: credit card debt. This is where things get genuinely ugly. The average household is carrying approximately $7,800 in credit card debt. $7,800. That's not a car loan or a mortgage where you're purchasing something that retains some value. That's $7,800 spent on items that are probably sitting in closets collecting dust or already disposed of. What makes this situation even more financially painful is the interest rates attached to credit cards. We're talking about 18%, 22%, sometimes 26% or higher annual percentage rates. If you're paying 22% interest on $7,800 in credit card debt, you're losing approximately $1,700 per year just to interest charges alone. That's money that could be building your wealth, but instead it's enriching credit card companies. Here's what really bothers me about credit card debt. The majority of it comes from purchasing things people don't actually need. Sure, sometimes people use credit cards for genuine emergencies or unexpected expenses, but let's be completely honest, much of that $7,800 went toward clothing, electronics, restaurant meals, online shopping impulses, and purchases that seemed justified at the time, but probably weren't. The solution is conceptually simple, even if it's not always easy to implement consistently. Pay off your credit card balances completely every single month. If you can't afford to pay cash for something, don't charge it to a credit card unless it's a true emergency. And if you're already carrying a balance, make eliminating it your absolute top financial priority, even before you start investing for retirement. There's no logical reason to earn 8% returns in the stock market if you're simultaneously paying 22% on credit card debt. Now let's talk about net worth, which is arguably the single best metric for measuring your overall financial health. Net worth is simply calculated as what you own minus what you owe. Add up the value of your property, your vehicles, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, and everything else you own. Then subtract your mortgage, credit card debt, student loans, car loans, and any other obligations you owe. Whatever remains is your net worth. According to comprehensive financial data, the median net worth for households is approximately $192,000. But just like with retirement savings, this number varies dramatically by age, and some of the breakdowns are genuinely eye-opening. If you're under 35, the median net worth is approximately $39,000. Now, if you're 26 years old and just establishing your career, having $39,000 in net worth is actually quite respectable. But if you're 34 and still sitting at $39,000, you might want to have a serious conversation with yourself about your financial trajectory and what needs to change. The 35 to 44 age group achieves better results with a median net worth of $135,000. The 45 to 54 demographic hits $246,000. People between 55 and 64 have a median net worth of $364,000, and those 65 to 74 years old reach approximately $410,000. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating about these figures. They're actually quite achievable for most people with reasonable incomes and basic financial discipline. You don't need to be an investment genius or create the next revolutionary business to hit these milestones. You simply need to consistently spend less than you earn and invest the difference wisely over time. But there's another dimension to this discussion that we need to address: savings rates. How much of their income is the average person actually setting aside? Economic data shows that households save approximately 4.5% of their income after taxes. For 0.5%. That's it. Now, for 0.5% might not sound catastrophic at first, but let's think about what this really means for long-term wealth building. If you're saving 4.5% of your income, and some of that needs to go towards short-term objectives like purchasing a vehicle or accumulating a down payment for property, there's not much remaining for long-term wealth accumulation. Consider these realities. The average down payment on a home is $68,000. The average vehicle costs over $48,000. A major home renovation averages $35,000. If you're only saving 4.5% of your income and you need to fund all these shorter-term goals, how much is actually making it into your long-term investment accounts? Most financial professionals suggest saving at least 15% to 20% of your income specifically for retirement, And that's in addition to whatever you're setting aside for other objectives. If you want to retire earlier than the standard retirement age and not work until you're 70, you probably need to be saving even more than that. This brings us to something that might surprise you: actual retirement age. When do you think most people actually stop working? If you guessed 65, you'd be close, but not exactly accurate. According to recent data, the average retirement age is approximately 62. Now, that might sound fairly attractive initially. Who wouldn't want to retire at 62 and spend their remaining years enjoying life however they choose? But here's the complication. Most people can't collect their full government retirement benefits until age 67. So if you're retiring at 62, you have 5 years to bridge that gap somehow. And if your retirement savings look anything like those media numbers we discussed earlier, those 5 years might be financially very challenging. Here's another perspective to consider. If you start working at 22 and retire at 62, you've been in the workforce for 40 years. That's 4 full decades of waking up early, commuting to work, dealing with supervisors, attending meetings, and doing whatever you do to earn your income. After all that time and effort, you finally get to retire with maybe $112,000 in your retirement account, which we already established provides roughly $400 per month to live on. Does that sound like a fair exchange to you? Because honestly, it sounds like a pretty terrible deal to me. But here's where the situation becomes even more concerning. Actuarial data suggests that someone who reaches age 65 can expect to live another 20 to 22 years. So if you retire at 62, you might have 25 years or more of retirement to fund. 25 years is an incredibly long time. That's potentially longer than your entire career up to that point. And here's the question that should genuinely keep you awake at night. How many of those 25 retirement years are you going to be healthy enough to truly enjoy? At 62, there's a reasonable chance you're still in decent physical condition. But what about at 72 or 82? Time has a relentless way of catching up with everyone. And the activities you can comfortably do at 65 might not be the same ones you can manage at 75 or 85. This is precisely why understanding these financial statistics isn't just about satisfying intellectual curiosity. It's about recognizing that the average person's approach to money fundamentally isn't working very well. When the typical household has less than $112,000 saved for retirement and is simultaneously carrying $7,800 in credit card debt, something is seriously broken in how we collectively handle finances. But here's the genuinely encouraging news, and this is why I wanted to share all these numbers with you today. Once you understand what average actually looks like, it becomes pretty clear how to perform better than average. And performing better than average doesn't require some secret formula or privileged knowledge that only wealthy people possess. If you're consistently saving more than 4.5% of your income, you're already ahead of most people. If you're avoiding credit card debt entirely, you're way ahead of the game. If you understand what you're investing in and you're regularly contributing to retirement accounts, you're outperforming the vast majority of the population. The reality is that most of these statistics are quite achievable to beat with some fundamental financial discipline. You don't need to earn a six-figure salary or receive an inheritance from a wealthy relative. You simply need to be more intentional and deliberate about your money than the average person. And frankly, that bar is set remarkably low. Think about it this way. If the average household is spending $6,200 per month, and you can figure out how to live comfortably on $5,000 per month, you just freed up $14,400 per year for savings and investments. Do that consistently for several decades, and you'll end up in a completely different financial category than most of your peers. The same principle applies across all of these statistics. Beat the average by even a modest margin in multiple areas, and the compound effect over time becomes massive. Earn slightly more than $57,000 per year. Save more than 4.5%. Avoid credit card debt completely, and invest consistently in low-cost diversified funds, and you'll retire with significantly more than $112,000. What I find most revealing about all of this is how these numbers expose the gap between what people claim they want and what they actually do. Everyone says they want financial security. Everyone says they want to retire comfortably. Everyone says they want to stop worrying about money. But the average person's behavior doesn't align with these stated goals. Maybe that's because most people don't actually know what average looks like. Maybe they assume everyone else has their financial situation under control, so they don't feel any urgency to change their own habits. Or perhaps they know they should be doing better, but they don't know where to start, or they believe it's too late to make a meaningful difference. If you're reading this, and some of these statistics hit uncomfortably close to home, don't panic. The fact that you're here learning about money and trying to understand your financial situation already puts you ahead of many people. Most individuals never even take the time to figure out where they stand or what they need to do differently. The key is to use these numbers as motivation, not as an excuse to give up. If you're 35 with less than $39,000 in net worth, that doesn't mean you're destined for financial mediocrity. It means you have some work ahead of you, but you also have 3 decades or more to get it right. And if you're already performing better than these averages in some areas, don't let that success make you complacent. Maybe you have a solid credit score and no credit card debt, but your retirement savings are lagging behind. Or perhaps you're excellent at saving money, but you're keeping it all in a basic savings account, earning practically nothing instead of investing it for growth. The bottom line is this: these financial statistics about the average person should be eye-opening, but they should also be empowering. When you know what normal looks like, you can make informed decisions about whether you want to be normal or whether you want to achieve something better than that. Personally, I believe you deserve better than retiring at 62 with $112,000 and hoping government programs don't run out of funding. You deserve better than carrying credit card debt and spending every dollar you earn with nothing left over. You deserve the peace of mind that comes with having your financial situation properly organized and under control. These statistics show us where the average person ends up, but they don't have to define where you end up. Use them as a starting point for improvement, not as a finish line to accept. Because once you understand what most people are doing with their money, it becomes abundantly clear how to do something different and achieve dramatically better results. The choice, as always, is entirely yours to make. And if this information opened your eyes to where you really stand financially, do me a favor and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's also the only thing that sets you free to make better decisions. Your financial future is waiting, and now you know exactly what you need to do to make it better than average.